Hey everyone, welcome to Math Talk. I'm your host, Brian Heisler, and today we're going to continue the mini-series on expressions, equations, and inequalities. Make sure you check out our first video, but for now, let's get started on our second one. So we have a question asked about the y-intercept of a line with a slope of 2 that passes through the point 1, 2. So a lot of times when I see equations of lines, I automatically think of slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. There's also point slope formula, which is on your formula sheet, but I honestly prefer slope-intercept. So let's look at this, the y-intercept. So when your point slope form or your slope-intercept form of an equation, the y-intercept is the b value. That's what we need to figure out. And honestly, we've actually been given m and we're given y and x with the information in our problem. So let's plug it all in and solve for b. So y, which is the y-coordinate here, xy, is 2. M is the slope, which is also 2. And x is the x-coordinate, which is 1, and plus b. So we have everything except for b. We need to solve for it. So let's do a little algebra. So 2 equals 2 plus b. I want to get b all by itself, so I need to subtract off this 2 from both sides. And I do that, I happen to get 0 equals b. So really, if I plug this into my equation, I'm going to end up with y equals 2x plus 0, which a lot of times, pretty much all the time, you're not actually going to see it as plus 0. You're going to see it written as y equals 2x. And that's fine. You know, b can be 0. It could be 0. It could be a positive number. It could be a negative number. If it is 0, you're usually not going to see it written. And it ends up that this is actually the final form of your equation in slope-intercept form, y equals 2x. So that's something to keep in mind when you look at equations of lines. Let's look at another example. Okay, this time we have actually two equations. It says the graphs of the lines of y equals x plus 3 and y equals negative 2x minus 3 are drawn on a coordinate plane. You know, you don't see it here, but we're assuming they're drawn. At what point will the two lines intersect? And so when you're drawing more than one line on a graph, it's possible they're going to intersect. And the key to this is that two lines will intersect when their values are equal. And so we need to figure out when these equations are equal to each other. And so the way to do that, actually, I'm going to write them out here. Y equals x plus 3, y equals negative 2x minus 3. The key is that if both of these expressions, x plus 3 and negative 2x minus 3, are both equal to y, then they're both equal to each other. And so we're going to set them equal to each other and solve. So I'm going to say x plus 3 equals negative 2x minus 3. Because what happens now is I have an equation where I just have one variable, I can solve for that variable, and then I can use that to plug into one of my original equations and solve for the other one. So let's do that. The goal of solving equations is to get your x's on one side and your numbers on the other. So I'm going to add 2x to here and here, just because I prefer to add numbers than subtract them, so I'm going to do that. X plus 2x is 3x. Now I have my x's on the left. I'm going to move all my numbers to the right. So I'm going to take this positive 3 and subtract it. I get 3x equals negative 6. Now my last step is to get rid of this 3 in front of the x. Because it's 3 times x, to get rid of it, I'm going to divide. Because you always do the opposite operation. And so x in this case is going to be negative 2, because negative 6 divided by 3 is negative 2. Now I have my x value. I need to take that x value and plug it into one of my equations to figure out what y is. Because we need a point at which they're going to intersect, and to get a point we need an x and y coordinate. So it looks like the top equation is actually simpler to do, so I'm going to use that to figure it out. So y equals negative 2 plus 3. I'm just taking this equation here and plugging in my x value. Negative 2 plus 3 is going to get me positive 1. So y equals positive 1. Now we need a point at which the two lines intersect, so I'm going to use my x and y coordinate to plug in the point -2, 1. And this is the value at which those two lines intersect. They're both equal to each other then. So if you were to graph these out on a coordinate plane, they would cross at -2, 1. Let's look at one more example. Okay, so this one says, what are the possible solutions to the quadratic equation of x squared minus 5x equals 24? So quadratic expression or quadratic equation is something that can be solved using the quadratic formula, which is on your formula sheet. If you don't have it memorized, you can always pull it up right from your GED test. I recommend doing that. If you notice on that, the quadratic formula is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So I'm actually going to go ahead and subtract 24 from both sides and just write it a little differently, because the quadratic equation always has to equal 0 for you to be able to solve it. And what it says is x is equal to -b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And what you're doing is you're taking the a value, the b value, and the c value, and you're plugging them into your equation and solving. So a is always the number in front here, b is always the number there, c is always the number there. If there is no number in front of your x squared term, it's always understood to be 1. So just keep that in mind. So let's plug them in and solve for x. -b is basically the opposite sign of what the b value is. So it's going to be, in this case, +5, because -5 is just +5. Plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which again is 1, times c, all over 2 times a, which again is just 1. All right, so let's start simplifying this stuff underneath the square root symbol to make this a little cleaner. X is, let's see, 5 plus or minus, I'm going to leave. -5 squared is -5 times -5, which is +25. -4 times 1 is -4, and -4 times -24 is +96, or +96, and 2 times 1 is just 2. All right, so we're getting a little closer to solving this. I'm going to go ahead and scoot over here, a little more room. X equals, let's see, 5 plus or minus square root of 25 plus 96 is 121, and 2 on the bottom. So we're almost there. We need to figure out the square root of 21. Square root of 121 is actually 11, which is a nice clean number. So we have our two options. With quadratic equations, there are usually going to be two answers. That's why you have a plus and minus. So let's split this up a little bit and figure out our two answers. 5 plus 11 is 16 over 2. And 5 minus 11 is -6 over 2. And so if we simplify those a little bit, use a different color, 16 over 2 is 8. And -6 over 2 is -3. So these are actually our two answers to the quadratic equation. So when you get to problems like this especially, I highly recommend using the formula sheet. It's going to help you with using the formulas. You don't have to memorize formulas with the GED test. They're always going to be available to you to use. So please keep that in mind and use them to your advantage. And I hope this helps. Make sure you check out our other videos on this little mini-series. Thanks for watching. If you have any other questions or you need assistance and you live in the Palm Beach County area, visit our website at geds.com to find a location near you and sign up for classes.